Please just come wake me up. Huh?
Well, I'll take pictures.
YouTube it. Okay.
We'll check your wallet first.
Okay. I'm good? Okay. So basically the talk today is finding low-hanging fruit with Kali. How many of you guys are familiar with Kali Linux? Most of you, great. How many of you guys are actual pen testers? Guys, gals, pen testers? Not a lot of you. Okay. So the point of this talk, the reason I wrote it, was not necessarily for pen testers, but it was more for the folks who are defending networks. Okay, because I can tell you from personal experience, when I sit down on your network to do a pen test, I'm going through what's in this slide deck. I'm going through that same process, and I am going to find the things that I'm going to teach you to find. And it would be so much better for you and your network if you found them first. Okay, so we're going to try to go through this. Hopefully, I'll take up the whole hour, but if not, I'm sorry. You know, you'll get a little extra break or something. Okay, so let's have at it. So the too long didn't watch version of this, we've got Kali. We're going to show you how to find some vulnerabilities with Kali, some common vulnerabilities. We call them low-hanging fruit. They're easy to find, easy to fix. The slide deck will be available on my GitHub account at Average Security Guy /presentations. The commands, the little cheat sheet of all the commands that I'm going to be showing you today, it is also on GitHub under cheat sheets. I'll have this slide up again at the end of the network, end of the talk, and we'll go from there. Okay, so who am I? Primarily, I see myself as a developer. I'm an author. I wrote a very basic intro to pen testing book that I self-published. It's on averagesecurityguy.info. You can go and grab it off my blog in Word and in PDF. It's in Creative Commons license, so if you want to use it and update it and redistribute it, whatever, just follow the Creative Commons license that's on it. Okay. I'm also a blogger, averagesecurityguy.info. I do some consulting as my own self for ASG Consulting, and I also work, well, I'm actually between jobs. Friday I left one job, and today, or Monday, I'm starting another job. So I will be working for a company called AppSec Consulting in San Jose, California. And I'll be doing some pen test consulting there. But I also do a little bit of freelance consulting on the side. And I'm on Twitter, Average Security Guy. All right, Kali. So what is Kali? Kali's a Linux distribution. It's built for penetration testing. It's got a lot of tools already built into it. It's ready. It's there. Just load it up. You can do it as a live distro, or you can install it, whatever. I typically have Kali running in a VM. I use VirtualBox, so I have Kali running in a VM. When I get on a network, I do everything from that Kali box for the most part. Okay, if you want to get Kali, go to kali.org, go to downloads. You can get a 32-bit version, a 64-bit version. You can get an ARM version. You can put it on a Raspberry Pi. You can put it on, there's a couple different Android tablets you can put it on. I believe they have an AWS instance now, too, so you can actually put Kali inside AWS. If you've got a virtual environment in AWS, you can put a Kali box in there and test without having to go through the external or the VPN or whatever into your AWS environment. You can test it from inside. They've also got instructions if you want to do a custom Kali distribution, you can do that. You can put it on a VM or you can put it as primary OS. It doesn't really matter. Okay, when you are setting up Kali, Kali is Debian based, so all the package stuff is done with apt-get. Most of you guys familiar with Linux, Debian, that kind of thing? Okay, so you're basically going to use apt-get update, apt-get upgrade. You can use dist upgrade, so when they go from Kali 1.0.0 to Kali 1.0.1, you can do dist upgrade and get that. If there's a new kernel available, typically upgrade won't install the new kernel, but dist upgrade will install the new kernel. And then there's auto remove. So sometimes when you update the kernel, the old kernel doesn't need to be there anymore. You can use auto remove and get rid of that old kernel. And y'all forgive me if I move around too much. It's part of my whole anxiety thing. Okay. Metasploit. So Kali's set up so that basically it will not run any services at boot. They basically want the thing to boot up, and you have to turn on everything. You have to set everything up because they don't want to turn on a service, and then you all of a sudden got a Kali box with a default root password or something like that on there, and now there's a service available, that kind of thing. It's kind of their philosophy. We don't start any services. If you're going to use Metasploit in Kali, you really want to use the database, and so you need to set up the database before you launch MSF Console. You can turn on the database using Postgres start service or sudo service, PostgreSQL start. Actually, I got sudo in here. You don't need sudo because you're typically root as Kali. If you ever wanted to run Kali as a low privilege user, you can do that. You can set up a low privilege account. Then you would need sudo. The original version of this talk discussed how to set up a low privilege user account, but I was like, we'll just go with root. Okay, so service, Postgres start the Metasploit service. If you want to enable these things on boot up, you just use update-rc.d. And again, all of these commands that are in the slide deck are in the cheat sheet. It's all available online on GitHub. You can look it up later, take notes, do whatever. All right, so real quick, we're just going to walk through this. I've got a Kali box. And we're going to see what we can make happen. Can y'all see that okay? Is it large enough? All right, cool. All right, so I'm not connected to the internet, so apt-get update is probably not going to work. I also have a hard time typing in front of people. So if anything weird happens, all right, we'll just kill it off. All right, so apt-get update, apt-get upgrade, it goes through its basic process. If we want to start the Postgres service, we just start Postgres, service, post, meta, exploit, start. Start that up, we're good to go. If we want to set them up again to boot, come on at boot, update, rc.d, Postgres, QL, enable. It would help if I spelled correctly. And Metasploit. Again. There we go. Okay, so now we've got basically everything set up so that when we fire off MSF Console later, it's going to connect to the database, and we're good to go. Next time we reboot Kali, it's going to come up. Database is going to be prepared for us. So MSF Console will be available when we boot. All right. So now, a quick look at Kali. This is just a little screenshot. Kali has a number of tools. They're broken down by the particular phase of the pen test that you're doing. If you guys are familiar with the PTES standard, the penetration testing, execution standard, there we go. Okay, it's got the multiple phases, and so Kali breaks its tools down the same way. You got information gathering, vulnerability analysis, that kind of stuff. And then it's also got a special section called the top 10 tools, and you can see that highlighted. AirCrack for wireless cracking, Burp Suite for web app testing, Hydra, John, both of those are for password guessing, that kind of thing. So Kali's got everything you want right there under the Kali Linux menu. Now, what are we talking about with low-hanging fruit? Low-hanging fruit is typically basic vulnerabilities. They're simple vulnerabilities. They're usually easy to find. They're typically easy to fix, but they are everywhere, okay? They are so common that one of the companies I used to work for, the first two, like unnecessary services and weak passwords, those were like actual headings in our pen test report. And we would just go through and enumerate whatever we found. Okay, this is how common this stuff is. If you go back and do any of this work on your own network, you will see how common this is. I would caution you that unless you own the network, you get written permission from the owner of the network before you do any of this stuff, okay? That is a legal issue. You can be fired from your job if you start running Cali and you don't have permission. The company has every right to let you go and nobody's going to care. So, legal permission. All right, so the typical low-hanging fruit. Unnecessary services, weak passwords, trivially exploitable vulns like Heartbleed and MS08067. I kid you not, it's still there. It's still out there on networks, okay? And then the best one is web-based admin interfaces. We're going to talk about Jenkins in a little while, but a common one that I find on networks are UPS servers with web-based admin interfaces and default passwords. So you log in, you got a default password, you log in, you go to the configuration page or something, and there's a big button that says shut down UPS. I can literally shut down your entire data center, depending on how you've configured it, shut down the entire data center with a click of a button because of a little web app on your network, okay? I see this a lot. Okay, so if we want to find unnecessary services, the best tool to use is Nmap, Network Mapper. It is designed for mapping networks. Okay, there's lots of other tools out there. There's Zmap, MassScan. Both of those are asynchronous, so they basically throw a bunch of packets, and they're meant for scanning large sections of large networks like the internet. Nmap is the one you want to use for your internal network, unless you happen to have a Class B or something. If you have a Class B, maybe throw MassScan at it, and then you can go from there. All right, so if we want to find TCP ports and UDP ports, default is to look for TCP ports. We give it an IP address, we give it a range, something, and it'll start looking for TCP ports. If you want to find UDP ports, you do -SU, and it'll do UDP. Am I going too fast? Talking too fast? We're good. Okay. Adrian in the back. Inigo Montoya. All right. Okay. Okay. So if we want to identify the actual services, it's one thing to see what ports are open on a box, but we want to know what services are there and if those are the services that we actually expect to be there. So we can use the -A switch, which is aggressive. So it's going to start doing some service scanning. It'll run some of the Nmap scripts. We'll talk about the Nmap scripts in a second. It'll run certain Nmap scripts as part of that -A, and it comes back with more data about the actual service if it's able to get that data. Sometimes it can't get the data. It just doesn't have a fingerprint for it, and it'll spit out some data that you can give to Nmap, and they can use it to try to write a fingerprint for that particular service. But -A will give you your extra data about a service. Now, by default, Nmap's going to scan for the top 1,000 ports. Okay, years ago, the author of Nmap basically went through this process of looking at all these port scans he had done and found the most common ports, kind of arranged them that way so you can, when you scan, you by default get the top 1,000. You can do the top 10. You know, you can use something like top ports, minus top ports, and give it a value like 100 or a 10 or whatever, and do just those top ports. Or you can give it a port range using -P, okay? And then if you want to save all this stuff in an XML file, which I highly recommend you doing because we're going to play with MSF console later, and you can import all that stuff into Metasploit into the database. You just use the OX switch, -O capital X, and give it a file name, and it'll create an XML file for you. All right, so inside MSF console, once you fire it up, we can import that XML file, and then MSF console has some nice tools to let us look at all the services, the hosts, and then we can view specific hosts and specific services using flags to the services and host commands in MSF console. All right, we're going to hope to not fail on the demo. I have two vulnerable VMs running in the background. One I have Metasploitable running. If you've never played with Metasploitable, it is worth your time to get Metasploitable and to practice these commands and practice your pen testing and stuff on Metasploitable. I also have a custom Ubuntu 12.04. I had to go and find an old 12.04 so I could set up Heartbleed and actually demo scanning for Heartbleed. It's kind of hard to find an old Ubuntu. Anyway, so we're going to play with Mmap here, and hopefully I'm not killing the small. Yep, again with my typing. All right, so we're scanning the top 1,000 ports on these two boxes, 10.0.2.5 through 6. And it'll take a couple minutes. Nmap can take its time sometimes. All right, so we've got some open ports here. This one here with all the open ports, that's Metasploitable. That lots of stuff to play with on Metasploitable. And then this is my custom box with Heartbleed and a couple other things going on with it. Okay, so we can see all the open ports. If we want to scan, I'm not actually going to scan for UDP. We're just going to do the top ports this time. All right, I threw in another flag here, -- open. When you specify ports on an Nmap scan, it will show you all of those ports, whether they're opened or closed, okay? I don't actually care about closed ports right now. I'm just going to do the open ports, so I'll do -- open, and it shows me only the open ports out of the top 10 ports, okay? So now we've got a lot less data to look at. It's not everything that's there, but it gives us a good starting point, you know, of what to look at. All right, so now we're going to try the same thing. This time, we're going to do an aggressive scan, and we're going to do all right, we're going to save it all out to the local network.xml. It'll take a second to run that. And I forgot to bring a bottle of water in here. Got a lifesaver on. All right, sometime this week. Just because this didn't have open on it. Because my cheat sheet didn't have open on it. I could have put open in there. Since I'm doing the default ports anyway, it's only going to show the open ones. So, if it ever actually finishes. All right, any questions while I'm awkwardly waiting for this thing to run? Yes, sir. That's a whole other talk in and of itself. At the end of the slide, or at the end of the presentation, I'll have a slide deck, and even on the cheat sheet that you go get on GitHub, there will be a link to a tutorial called Metasploit Unleashed by the OffSec team. Go get it. Read through it. That's a whole, Metasploit's a whole talk in and of itself. Okay. Metasploit, Metaprimer is on SecurityTube. Is it videos? So securitytube.net or com? SecurityTube.net. Okay. SecurityTube.net. Look for the Metasploit primer. And I'm irritated. Okay. Let's see. All right, let's try that and see if that goes any faster. Any other questions while I awkwardly wait? It doesn't matter. It's on a local network. It's going to go or not. Oh, you son of a gun. It is. If you're trying to, like I say, I'm assuming that you are a defender wanting to find stuff on your network, not that you are a pen tester trying to be quiet. If you're a pen tester trying to be quiet, this is not for you. That's a different talk. This is stuff, you know, you are looking, you are purposely trying to find these as a defender so you can get rid of them before the pen tester shows up.
The newest version of the Kali might use the response functionality, look for a call out to be able to do automatic stuff.
Callie?
Yep.
That kind of goes against their policy. I have to look into that.
The newest versions will automatically go looking for OS updates. I think you're right, yeah.
That's crazy.
And that's how my business response team yelled at me. Are you using Kali? I sent you.
Here's a question. Which version of Kali are you using for this demonstration?
I downloaded the latest version 2 or 3 weeks ago, so whatever it was, I think it's 1.00.
Yeah.
1. What?
1.10a.
Okay. It's whatever's up there right now. That's what I got, or whatever was there 2 weeks ago.
So is there a way to make in-app listings, or is it strictly
It's just the way it works. Because what it's doing is it's going to send out a packet. It's going to send out a send request to see if a port responds.
you can make in-app
You can use stealth mode. There's a stealth option.
Is there?
Yeah. But it's going to take your scans a lot longer because it's going to slow down how fast it sends out the traffic.
Yeah.
The timing, manipulate the packets.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
Choose only to send one send packet if you want.
yeah, you can. I mean, you can slow it down, but it's still going to be.
You can do anything you want with that minus crash your own packets.
All right, DB import. All right, so here's our XML file that we did earlier. We loaded it into the database in MSF console, and now we can look at hosts, and it'll show us what hosts we have. Nmap identified them as Linux hosts. We can look at services, and Nmap shows Nmap identified these specific services. You know, VSFTPD, Telnet, you know, those kind of things that are available. And then if we're looking for something specific, like later on, we're going to play around with some passwords on Telnet. You know, if I can type, we can actually look for specific ports. I just want to see the boxes that are Telnet. Okay, does that make sense? Questions, comments? Okay, I'm going to assume we're okay. All right. Okay, so that's basic. That's the basics of using Kali to find these services. I mean, it's very simple. Just a few Nmap scans, see what the results are, and see if they're what you expect. I mean, you know, you go through and you do a scan, and you've got a Linux server on your Windows DMZ. Something's not right here. You know, you use your logic and what you know about your network to see if anything stands out on these services and on the hosts that you find. And there's lots of other tools. They're not part of Kali, but there's lots of other tools that'll let you pull in Nmap data, stick it into a database, and do trending and all that kind of stuff. I don't usually care about that. Okay, weak passwords. This is the next thing. I mean, all of you have Telnet servers on your network. You got SSH servers. You got SMB servers, POP, IMAP, SMTP, all this stuff that's sitting out there. And a lot of them require usernames and passwords. If you've worked with users for very long and consider yourself a user, if you think about the passwords you have, you know that users are not good at generating passwords. That's why we have password managers, because they generate random passwords. Users are not good at generating passwords. So weak passwords are often a good way into a network, and particularly weak admin credentials. Okay, most everyone, you know, if you're running a Windows domain, your domain administrator probably has a strong password on it. If you're thinking, I mean, if you're thinking right, you're trying to do the basics right, your domain admin's got a strong password typically. What about the local admin? Okay, a lot of times you'll see a local admin password and it'll just be like the company name 1, okay, or the company name in some year. Or if it's a vendor box that you can't touch, it may be, you know, just some default password. And now you have local admin access to a box. Well, Windows is beautiful in that if I am running a service on that box, as a domain user or as a domain admin user, I can pull data from that service and do what's called pass the hash, and now I can be that domain user. So your weak local admin will often lead to a full domain admin compromise, even though your domain admin accounts and even your domain user accounts have strong passwords. Okay, so you got to be careful with the whole weak password thing. Oh, Metasploit also includes some very nice word lists under, or Kali, not Metasploit. Kali includes some very nice word lists under user share word lists, and they are great for working on weak passwords. Metasploit is very good at finding weak passwords. You can use Hydra. It's included on Kali. You can use Ncrack, which is from the Nmap team. I don't remember if it's included on Kali right now. There's a lot of other tools. I've got some custom Python tools that I've written for doing weak password testing and that kind of stuff. But Metasploit has a lot of them built in. Under auxiliary scanner, you can do SMB, FTP, SSH, MySQL. These are things you should be doing on a regular basis within your network. Okay, checking for weak passwords. MySQL can often lead to full compromise of a domain. Admin password on MySQL. SSH is often a good way of getting a good foothold and then escalating up. So lots of good stuff, and Zach likes VNC, right, Zach? Because oftentimes it has weak passwords, and then you just get dumped right into a nice GUI. So, all right, we're going to try to do some weak passwords. That is not what I want. Okay, so I'm still in MSF console. And actually, I'm going to hop out. No, I'm not. I'm going to open up the terminal. Okay, so we're going to go to user, share, word lists real quick. And Ellis. Okay, so you've got a lot of word lists in here. DearB and DearBuster, those are good for web app stuff, using with Burp and DearB and DearBuster for finding stuff in web apps. The Metasploit stuff, those are kind of the default word list that Metasploit uses when you try to crack passwords with John's, with the fast crack or whatever that's built into Metasploit. The nice thing is Kali includes RockU, the RockU text, and that's a great one to start with. You do have to remember to unzip it. If you notice, RockU has approximately 14 million passwords. These are real passwords that were taken in the RockU compromise. Okay, so you have a nice starting point for your password cracking with RockU. Okay, so we're going to telnet. So use auxiliary scanner telnet. That is not what I want. Tab complete's great until it's not. All right, so we're going to use telnet login. I'm going to show options. And this is going to be a problem because of the screen here. Okay, so all of your brute force stuff in Metasploit, they have a number of options. We can use the blank password. Basically, it'll throw a username and no password at it. You can set it to throw the username and then the username as the password at it. You can give it a password list. If you've collected other passwords, as Metasploit finds passwords using these brute force tools, it sticks them into the database. You can use those previously captured passwords for other password cracking. Okay, so if you find the SSH login, you can use it on Telnet or SMB, test it out throughout the network. So we're going to set a couple of options here. Metasploit default username is MSF admin. Usernames are typically pretty easy to get, so I'm not worried about how to get that. Set pass file user. I'm sorry about my bad typing, guys. Share word lists manifest trek. All right, set. All right, now here's the cool thing about services. You remember this command earlier, services minus P, it'll show me all the services that are using that port. If I throw this command on here, minus R, it automatically sets up that list of services as the targets for the scan. So I don't have to go in and enter those things manually, by IP address. I can just do minus R. It automatically does it for me. And then I'm going to run, since this is an auxiliary scan, we're going to run it, not exploit. And come on. Well, that's kind of interesting. There we go. See the green plus? That's good for me. I like that. Okay. That means that's a successful set of credentials. So MSF admin, MSF admin. All right. That's the login credentials on Telnet for that Metasploitable box. Okay. Green pluses are always good. Okay. Now you can do the same kind of thing with just, all kinds of like SMB, SSH. There's a number of them out there that will let you Microsoft SQL, MS SQL, MySQL, and then what we can do. It's another little command for you. If you hit creds, type in creds, it'll tell you the box, it'll tell you the service, it'll tell you the username and the password, and you're good to go, and you can use that in other places. Okay? Sound good? We all good? Still following? Okay. Yes, we like creds. Nothing more frustrating than running a long brute force and you don't get anything. Where am I going? Okay. Keynote. Okay, so next. Exploitable vulnerabilities. There's a lot of exploitable vulnerabilities that are out there. And when I say exploitable, I just mean trivially exploitable. Things like MS08, 067, Heartbleed, just a number of other like shell shock, those kind of things that are easy to exploit, and they can lead to full compromise of a machine. Nmap has a scripting engine. Nmap was never designed to be a vulnerability scanner, but by creating this scripting engine, the Nmap authors basically set it up so you could use it as a vulnerability scanner. Okay, so when Heartbleed came out, the researchers who were looking at that and trying to figure out how to scan for it started writing Nmap NSE scripts. Okay, so you would have an NSE script shortly after Heartbleed came out, so you could start scanning your network. You could scan it with Nessus or Qualys or something like that because they were working on doing the same thing. But if you don't have Nessus or Qualys, Nmap's got it. Okay, and you can still use it. You can still use it to find Heartbleed and stuff like that on your own network now. Nmap has all of its scripts organized into 14 categories. If you go to nmap.org, there's a nice little online tutorial and book and all that. And there's a whole section on NSE scripting and what scripts are available and how to build them, all that good stuff. But they basically have 14 categories. A script can be in multiple categories. The category marked safe, those scripts are safe to run on your network. If it's not in the safe category, it is technically considered unsafe, and you are risking your own network by running it. When I say unsafe, I don't mean it may harm your network, but typically it's because it's a DOS or something, so it's a resource utilization thing. MS08, 067 is unsafe because if it fails, it could DOS the box, that kind of stuff. So you have to be careful what you run. If you want to run, if you run Nmap with the -A or -SC, it'll run the default scripts that are there. There's a number of default scripts that it uses for gathering service information, things like that, and those are run with -A. If you want to run a particular set of scripts, you can also do that, and we'll look at that in just a sec. This is the whole safe, unsafe thing here. Some scripts can crash services. You got to be careful. If it's marked safe, it's generally stable and won't hurt you. If it's marked unsafe, you run it at your own risk. Okay. And then, of course, nmap.org, the book, nse.html, and then nse.doc. Those are both the good places to get more data on NSE. Well, some hardware is going to fall over if you send it anything, so you can't help that. Yeah, there's always a possibility when running any type of scan that you will knock over some piece of hardware. We had a company we used to do work for, and you could not run an Nmap scan against their switches because it would always knock out those switches, and they would have to manually go to the place and restart the switch before the switch would work again. Okay, 3COM, I mean, the switch just didn't work. Okay, it was just bad. All right. Okay, so Nmap, if we use ---- script, we can tell it a specific script to run, such as SSL-heartbleed, and then we give it an IP address, and it will run that script against that IP address or that range. You can do the SMB check. SMB check does the it'll look for MS-08-067 and a couple of other SMB ones. That's considered unsafe. And then the RDP will look for MS-12-020, the beautiful thing that never did materialize in that particular vulnerability. It was sad. Okay, let's try another demo. So far, we've been doing pretty good. I know. It's a good thing I don't believe in luck, right? Okay. All right, so Nmap -P 443. We're not going to look on other ports. We're just going to look on 443 because I know it's there and that's what I want to do. Script equal SSL. All right, so basically we're going to run an Nmap scan against all port 443s, and we're going to look for heartbleed. So we're going to run that. It shouldn't take too long. It is. I swear it ran faster when I tested this out at home. Okay, so 10.2.6 seems to be okay. But looky there, 10.2.5 is vulnerable to heartbleed. Okay, so you have tools within Kali. You know, I'm going to tell you something. I used to work for Tenable. As of Friday, I stopped working for Tenable. Nessus is an awesome product. I love it. I have loved it for years. But if you can't afford a Nessus license, there's tools. There are tools available. Use the free version. Violate the rules. Yes, please. Thank you. Okay. I'll pretend you didn't say that. Okay. All right. So let's try one other check real quick. And we are going to do the SMB check. Now what should happen here, one, there's no SMB vulns to actually find, but what should happen is we should get an error message from Nmap telling us that the script didn't run because it was unsafe. Okay. Well, you know, assuming that I actually used the right port for SMB. There we go. Let's give it a sec. I guess technically it could be, but typically it's not. That's irritating. Takes too long.
So if you ever run Nmap and you can't figure out why it's taking so long, you can press lowercase d to increase the debugging level down to OS level to see what it's doing.
Yeah.
And capital D will turn the debugging off.
There you go. That's a trick I didn't know.
You can do the spacebar and get the additional level, or you can toggle D.
Cool. All right, see that? We tried to run the unsafe script. It said the check was disabled, and then we need to actually add another argument to the script to say it's okay to run this unsafe script. Okay, so you know that it just kind of, it's an extra precaution there to keep you from screwing up. All right. All right, let's get through this last one and do our demo. Now this is what I actually enjoy most. Every pen test I do, all the web servers that Nessus or whatever tool I'm using, all the web servers that it finds, I literally go to every one of them. I open it up in a web browser, see what it is, see what it does, and look for default passwords and things. I've gotten onto UPSs, SANs, lots of homegrown web apps that people have running around on their network that have plenty of vulnerabilities in it. So what we're looking for in this particular case is web-based admin interfaces. Your typical admin interfaces are going to run on port 80, 443, 5800 is a VNC web-based deal, 8000, 8080. Okay, so we can scan, using Nmap, we can scan for these particular ports and then check those interfaces out for particular vulnerabilities. Okay, if you want to see what Metasploit is capable of doing as far as HTTP exploits, if you do a search /HTTP/, it'll show you all the exploit and auxiliary modules that fall under HTTP exploits in Metasploit, and there's a lot of them out there. All right. Let's try this one last thing, and this is the fun one, and we'll see if it works and move on with our lives. Okay, so we're going to check the network in map. Say P 80. Yep. Always double check before you run a command. I'll tell you what, the first time I gave this talk, I had a typo in my notes and totally failed on the last part that I wanted to demo because I had a typo. It was sad. Okay, so we're looking for web-based interfaces based on typical port. Okay, we did a -A to hopefully tell us what these web services are that are available. Any questions while I awkwardly wait again? Yes?
So I've been out of it for a few years. I remember a couple of years ago, people started introducing tools to screenshot as you find web interfaces.
Yes.
Which saves you a bunch of manual time going in the browser.
Yes.
Do you have one that you recommend? Because I don't remember what's up there.
No, because I don't typically do that. I have a Python script that'll parse an SS file and just give me links to all of those web interfaces, and I typically go and look at them myself. But yes, there are a number of tools available that will go to the web page, take a screenshot of the web page, dump the image in whatever local directory for that tool, and then you can go and look at those images, and it also helps with reporting and stuff.
Check out Eyewitness.
Eyewitness?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Okay. Okay, so our scan finished running. And we see that we have a Jenkins dashboard. Okay, anybody familiar with Jenkins? Any of you developers? Okay. Jenkins dashboard. Basically, Jenkins is, well, that's not what I want to do. Hold on. Jenkins is basically a continuous integration environment. So you set it up so that when you upload new code, it'll go through an automated process to make sure the code builds properly and does all its tests and things like that. And it'll tell you if your tests fail or pass and that kind of thing. But they've got this really cool tool built into it. See if I can do this. Nope, that is not what I want. Okay, so they got this really cool tool built into Jenkins. Now this right here, I'm just going to tell you, this is a default install of Jenkins. I have not modified it in any way, shape, or form. Notice that there's no password to get into it. It's just the dashboard. It's over HTTP. If I go here and click on Manage Jenkins, no password again to do any kind of management. There's a beautiful little piece right here called the script console. And this thing will literally let you write Groovy scripts, and it will run them for you. and it will spit out the answer, spit out the results. So what we can do is we can run this little command, and I am going to try to do this without screwing up too bad. Let's see, password. So this thing will literally let us run system commands. Groovy is built on Java, so you can probably inject some Java in there too. I don't know. I've not tried. All right, we're going to come down here. We're going to run this little baby. And there you go, okay? So it's just available there. And see, a lot of people don't realize that these things are out there on their network because they never scan for these web interfaces. They never look for them. But these kind of vulnerabilities are out there. And it's actually, there's actually in MSF console, and I don't have it up. How much time do I got? Yeah. Okay, so in MSF console, there is an exploit for this already built. So you can actually just set it up, run the exploit, and then you have a Linux shell on that Jenkins box. Or if it's a Windows, if Jenkins is running on Windows, you get a Windows shell, whatever. Okay, it's built right into Metasploit. And we'll do a quick search of the HTTP, and I'll show you that real quick. Okay, use exploit. All right, so what I'm doing is I'm setting up the IP address, I'm setting up the port that Jenkins is listening on, I'm setting up the target URI for the root of Jenkins. It's just root on this server. If it were further down into the directory tree, you'd have to put that in your target URI. And we know this thing's running on Linux, so we're going to set target 1, and then we're going to exploit. And I am the Jenkins user on the Jenkins box. And this stuff is just all over your network, okay? All right, real quick, one last thing, and then we'll take some questions if you guys have them. Search. All right, so we're going to do a quick search of what Metasploit has as far as HTTP. You're seeing exploits here, Trend Micro, Track It, some number of CMSs, Sybase, SolarWinds, lots of exploits available for a number of web services, and a lot of them are excellent, meaning they are reliably going to run, and you're reliably going to get a shell with them. Okay, does that make sense? All right. Questions? Nope. Thought I heard one. Okay, so if you want to find out more, again, this slide deck is online. Cheat sheet is online. I will shamelessly plug a small intro to pen testing book that I wrote. It's free. It's available on my website. You can get it in PDF or Word. Yes? Because Metasploit is run on Ruby, and Ruby is an interpreted language, so it's not as fast as C and things like that. No, the entire project is done in Ruby. And then it's got so many plugins that it's loading up at the same time. It just takes a while. Yeah. If you have the database there, it'll generate the kind of plug-in index in the background, and so it can come up faster. And then there's some folks that have worked on basically optimizing the Metasploit startup so that it comes up faster, and then you have to kind of load the plug-ins because it doesn't load them all at startup. You have to kind of load in what you want. Any other questions? What?
Yeah, go back to that page.
Am I supposed to be average security guard?
Yes, sorry guys, I got a typo in there. It's github.com. Hold on one second, and let me go back to the original. Well, no, the original page is the same thing. Yeah, if you go to the first URL, github.com, average security guide, just drop off presentations, throw a cheat sheet on there. Yeah, it's under mine. It's under average security guide. And there's a couple other cheat sheets on there. There's one that I use for a lot of pen tests. It's just got just some basic commands on there. And there's one for Git if you are into development and want to learn how to use Git. I've got a cheat sheet to show you how to use my workflow, just the basic workflow I use. Any other questions? Thank you very much.